Hello everyone. Our form looks a bit ugly, so let's design it and work with styles again. Like last time, I won't focus much on the layout techniques themselves, but I'll discuss what relates to CSS and using classes in React. Alright, let's create a file, index.module.scs. Okay, it's prepared for us. And let's see what classes we actually need here. So, let's go. We'll remove all styles from here and work on class name level. Well, you see, in theory, this should be, I'll call it a CSS field. So, CSS, we need to import it right away. Import CSS from index.modules.css. Okay, but I want this field, the whole field, to also have a class named disabled when our input is disabled. So, for this, I need to create an optional class and a CSS field to be always present. How is this done? In React, there's the most popular solution for this. It's called classnames. Right, we install it and import cn from classnames. Okay, how does it work? Well, if we wanted to simply pass two classes, we could do it like this. cn, CSS field, and CSS disabled. There. But we need disabled to be optional. How can we achieve that? So, first of all, let's move this logic into a separate variable. So we're talking about disabled. When is that? Yes, formic from submitting. Good. And we can theoretically do it like this. If disabled, then like this. But it's not very readable. I suggest the following approach whenever you have optional classes. Do it like this. Pass an object to cn, where each key corresponds to a class. If it should be applied, then it should say true. If not, then false. And it will look like this, CSS disabled. If it is disabled, there you go. And you have such an object, and it will figure out by itself which class to include when. All right. So, we've sorted out this part. Next, we have the label. We don't need a line break here because we'll handle it at the style level. Class name, CSS label. All right. Now the classes for the input itself. Class name. So, here I want it to be an optional style. Because if this input is invalid, I want it to have a red border, right? And accordingly, I also need to play with the class here. Let's put our invalid state story into a separate variable. So, const invalid equals this. Okay, here we can immediately substitute it, and off we go with the same structure. So, it's definitely CSS input. And, optionally, it will be CSS invalid. Invalid. Good, it's done. Here. Then what else would I want at the style level? Let's set a minimum width for our input, and let these two be short by default, but so we can still control the maximum width of our input from our code. And let the description be longer. I want to pass the max width property to our input, which will be optional and will override what we set through CSS. So, max width. It's not mandatory. This is a field with a number. Okay, here. And we can already pass it in the style max width. Okay, yeah, right. And we just need to handle the error. Cool. CSS error. So I think I've added the main styles, and now let's bring in our style. So let's first see how they look. Then we'll tweak them a bit anyway, right? Very good. We'll set the spacing between these elements separately later on. So we will have a special component for creating spacing. That will be in another lesson. And here, everything looks quite nice already. Here, our errors are displayed. And these things are bold. This becomes red. If we fill if it's a name, then it stops being red. Yes. Very good indeed. Plus, if we're focused, then it also becomes blue. So let's deal with what's related to CSS. Here's what this construction means. It's the same as writing it like this. Dot field, dot disabled, without space. This means we have a field that has both the class field and disabled. But you see, there's no ampersand here. And therefore, this is the same as dot field, dot label. And this means to find elements with a class field. And somewhere inside, there should be an element with a class label. And it will have a style like this. Okay? Here, I just wanted to talk about the ampersand and how it works in CSS. This thing is specifically from CSS. Well, now this colon focus is a pseudo class, meaning it's a component state. To have an understanding what it might look like, so we take this input. Yes, here it is. Wait a minute, it's in focus right now. This is how it looks out of focus, but we can trigger it manually. Here we click on the colon hover and say colon focus, and you see, it turns blue. And there are other pseudo classes. Actually, there are more, but that's for discussions on markup. All right. Here the ampersand means that if the input has both a class and invalid at the same time, which is what we're achieving, for getting that input, an invalid can occur simultaneously. There it will be. Everything else is as usual. Yes, we use some variables. If our component is disabled, then it is transparent. Well, that's nice. There. All right, we sorted out class names and made our input look nice. Thank you. In the next lesson, we'll style the text area component. Thanks. Let's move on.